welcome to this week's yoga class. Today we'll be playing with two principles from the niyamas. The niyamas are the second limb of yoga, and they are the observances, the 5 actions that are recommended for a yogi to be healthy and clean. They set the way and lay the foundation for your asana practice. So the two we'll be looking at are tapas and santosa. And tapas, T-A-P-A-S, and santosa. Tapas is sometimes translated as intense effort under all circumstances to achieve your goal. Tapas is a future-oriented. It's about creating the future, working hard. And santosa is usually translated as contentment. Contentment is a present moment phenomenon. We become content when we accept reality in this moment exactly as it is, without feeling the need to change anything. Okay? It's being able to take a nap on a hammock with a glass of lemonade, even though the dishes need to be washed, or you need to do something else around the house, or there are weeds in the garden. Being able to let go of all of that and recognize that this moment is perfect. There's nothing you need to do. So the yogis have always said that these two opposite qualities, accepting the universe as it is and shaping the universe, are both necessary to live a healthy life. Without tapas, we never get anything done. It requires tapas to get out of bed a little bit earlier to have time to do a yoga practice. Without santosa, we end up in that trap of being a type A personality driven, always working, and we lose the ability to enjoy life. So we end up working without any enjoyment. It's called joyless striving. Okay? So we need to cultivate both of these. Now, at any given moment, you can have a balance between these. Tapas is always present in a yoga practice. Even at the very end, in Shavasana, when you're relaxing, you still need just the barest thread of tapas, otherwise you fall asleep. So even in Shavasana, there's this delicate thread of intent. Likewise, in poses that are dominated by tapas, like a handstand or downward facing dog, we should still pay attention to santosa, the present moment enjoyment of what you're doing, and the emphasis on relaxing. Okay? There's always parts of your body that are not contributing to the pose, that aren't necessary for the pose. So for instance, in downward facing dog, you may notice you're starting to clench your jaw. So when you're focusing on santosa, you focus on releasing, relaxing, softening, breathing, and enjoying where you are without any idea of trying to get somewhere. And in tapas, you are thinking about where you want to be tomorrow, next week, next month, and what is the work you have to do to get there. So the key is to be able to move in and out of these two energies. Now for most people, we get stuck, and it's a balance. So if you imagine a balance, and if you imagine the scale is stuck here, with santosa dominating, tapas is present but not really as strong. What should happen is that this should tip back and forth. Even in your own practice, you should start off with santosa dominating at the very beginning of your class and at the very end. And in the middle, you want to really get the fire going, and you want that balance to shift where the fire element is more present, more dominating in your practice. Even within a single pose, you start off with santosa, you move into fire, into effort, and then you come back to santosa within the pose. So you get these minor fluctuations within the larger arc of the class or of your practice. The problem is that for most people, this balance is set. Okay? And so they go through life in this steady state. If you imagine that this is the rhythm of tapas and sentosa, and they're never really completely relaxed and happy and content, and they're exhausted, too tired to work. And then because they don't work, when they try to relax, their mind is racing. And then because they don't get enough rest, they're tired. So at work, they're thinking about how they want to be on vacation. At vacation, they're thinking about wanting to be at work and what they're missing at work. And they get in this kind of twilight zone. You can get trapped there, where you're laying awake at 3 in the morning tired and you can't sleep. So what we want in yoga is, instead of this, we want to embrace this. Where we learn how to really fire up the tapas, but we also learn how to completely relax and surrender, and how to move in and out of these two energies. So the question is, if you're trapped in this twilight zone, how do you begin to broaden that range, expand and stretch that window and open that window of life so that we're comfortable in a much wider playing field? And the trick is that you don't start off by trying to increase sentosa. It doesn't work. Okay? When you try to increase sentosa, you get stuck. Anyone that's ever had insomnia knows that if you lay there trying to relax, it usually makes things worse. So the trick to this, to breaking out of this cycle and really beginning to expand this energetic curve, isn't to try and push down on some tapas. It's trying to lift up into tapas instead of sentosa. So an example of that is, if you're stuck in this twilight zone, you go to the gym, you work out really hard, okay? And even if you're tired, can you still work out? Can you still put forth effort when you're tired? And the answer is, it's not maybe easy, but it's possible. You can summon that will to go against the urge or the tendency or the momentum of being tired, to push back into it with tapas, burning effort through all circumstances to achieve your goal. You push into that tapas and you can do that. Okay, it's possible, even when you're tired. Then what happens when you finish? You're able to relax a little bit more deeply because you've worked out and moved that stale energy out of your system. You're able to relax a little bit more deeply. That allows you to get better rest, which allows you then to push a little bit deeper into the tapas. And so we begin like pushing a swing. With each push, the swing increases the arc and the momentum, and we slowly begin to build up that swing. So that's what we want to do with our practice today. So take a moment to get comfortable. Draw the flesh out from under the sit bones, reach the sit bones back, tilt the pelvis forward, lengthen up through the spine, lift, broaden, and open the heart. Sink the shoulder blades, keeping the armpits open. Close the eyes, and then take a moment just to notice your breathing. Now, there are many ways that we can shift our balance between tapas and sentosa, and one of those ways is to learn how to adjust our breathing, our prana. So if I stretch the exhale, it has a softening effect. It moves me into sentosa. And if I compress the exhale and exaggerate the inhale, that moves me into tapas. So through the class, we'll use not only our attitude and our intention, but also our breathing to help us shift back and forth. So let's start by relaxing into sentosa with your eyes closed. breathe in and count to 4 on the inhale. And then see if you can comfortably breathe out to 5 or 6 or even 7. Don't try to force anything. All that's really important is that you allow the exhale to become a little longer than the inhale. Breathe in for 4, and then slow the exhale down by relaxing, not by forcing. As you're doing that, begin relaxing the face, the jaws, the lips, the tongue, the mouth, the tip of the tongue, the belly of the tongue, the root of the tongue. Let your mouth hang open slightly, slack jaw. Relax the back of the throat, but especially the area around the eyes, behind, between the eyes. Let the cheeks hang from the cheekbones. And stretch the exhale into a slight sigh. Allow the head to get heavier and heavier, and slowly, lazily begin to float your head around. 99% Sentosa. Not trying to get anywhere, not trying to do anything. Instead, focus on just paying attention to what is, and moving your head in such a way that you experience pleasant, subtle, delicate, pleasurable sensations. Two or three more breaths. And then as you continue to float your head around, begin to play with your shoulder blades and your shoulders. So as you move your shoulder blades around on the back, the shoulder will follow them. So allow the shoulder to move around, and then the opposite shoulder. But see if you can move from the shoulder blades. See if you can feel the shoulder blades moving. And then coming back to center. Now, opening into our twist. Before we do that though, come back to your breathing. Breathe in for 4, stretch the exhale comfortably. And with the right shoulder lift, draw the shoulder blade around, hug the spine with the shoulder blade, draw the shoulder blade down and lift the chest up. And here we're utilizing just a very delicate tapas, just a little effort, not a lot. Cross the opposite hand over, lift, broaden, expand and rotate. Now for 2 or 3 breaths, let the exhale be longer. And don't put forth much effort to twist, just seeing how far you can open before you meet resistance. Then bring up just a little bit more effort and bring your breath to balance. 4-4, breathe in for 4, out for 4. Begin to work the pose just a little bit more strongly. And then shift your breath and make the inhale a little longer than the exhale. So shorten the exhale, lengthen the inhale slightly, and then use that to help turn a little bit deeper. Take a couple more breaths, beginning to work the pose now. Shifting into a little bit more tapas. One more breath. Come back. Center. Switch the breath back. Make your exhale longer than the inhale. Take a moment just to notice the difference between the left side and the right side of your body. See if you can feel the after effects of twisting to the right. Keeping the exhale longer. Come into a delicate twist. Lift the chest, find that left shoulder blade, draw it back and down. As you lift the chest up, rotate, in just a minimum amount of effort to maintain expansiveness and elongation. Then begin to shift to a 4-4 breath pattern and begin to work just a little bit more. Maybe making some adjustments with your shoulder blades or your ribs. And then for the last 2 or 3 breaths, let the inhale be longer, shorten the exhale a little bit, and use that to find a little bit more tapas. Take a breath or 2. Back to center. Roll out the shoulders. And then come back to Sentosa. Slowly exhale slightly. Let go of the future. And for the next 2 or 3 breaths, just enjoy the present moment experience. Noticing any subtle lingering after effects from the twist. Come up onto our hands and knees for cat-cow. A few repetitions on your own. Improvising, repositioning your hands, adding a few lateral movements, undulating, rolling, turning, twisting, occasionally repositioning your hands to access new movements, new sensations. Take a breath or 2 to finish, coming back to center. And then lifting upright for cow. Knees hip width, legs extended straight back, toes pointing behind you. Now first, take a moment just to settle. Stretch the exhale slightly. Now bring the breath to a 4-4 pattern and begin to lift and expand and broaden. Gently lift the pelvic floor, firm the abdomen, lift the chest, sink the tailbone. Let all of those actions be subtle, not enough that it is visible to an observer, just enough that you can feel you're doing it. Now staying with the 4-4 breath pattern, rotate to your right. Take your right hand, place it on the thigh or on the heel. Float the left arm. Now, begin to emphasize the inhale, shorten the exhale. Maybe a 5-4 or 6-4. and begin to work the pose. Lift the chest, take the hips forward, draw the right shoulder blade in and down. Couple more breaths. Coming back to center. Reverse the breathing. Stretch the exhale. Take a moment to relax, to settling back into Santosa. Soften the face, the jaws, the lips, the tongue, the mouth. And then when you're ready, go back to 4-4 breath. Lift, expand, slight rotation to the left hand on the sacrum, or reach back for the heel. Float the right arm. Take the hips forward, lifting the pelvic floor, lifting the chest. Taking the right shoulder back. Working the inhale, shortening, compressing the exhale slightly. Experiment to find just the right way of breathing that helps you to tap into that tapas energy. One more breath. Back to 4-4. Child's pose. Extended child's, knees walking wider. Sink the hips back, walk the hands forward, lower your head, and now stretch the exhale. And each exhale, relaxing with a sigh. And then coming back to table. Then walk your hands in close to the knees, tuck the toes, lift the knees, and then walking your hands up towards your feet into a standing forward bend. Remember, if you have low back issues or tight hamstrings, place your hands on your thighs, come up a little higher. If it feels good, lean into a hamstring stretch. You can alternate legs, bending one knee then the other, shifting the stretch from one side to the other. Take a breath or two. When you're ready to come up, let the knees buckle, roll up one vertebra at a time. Coming to the front edge of your sticky mat, bring your hands into prayer. And we'll start off with a little pandiculation just to warm up. Float the arms up and out, and then without thinking, as if you're just waking up in the morning and stretching. Moving sensation through the fascial net. And then stiffening up and stretching a little bit more vigorously, adding a little bounce, a little dynamic stretch. Yawning as much as possible. And then coming back to center, bring your hands together over the heart. Viniyoga Sun Salutation. We'll start off slowing down the exhale. Normal inhale, slow exhale. And on the inhale, stretch overhead. On the exhale, release, and then stay in the forward bend for a breath or two. In this way, we begin to emphasize the Santosa quality, the contentment, the relaxation. Then roll up,
On the inhale, stretch overhead. And then on the slower exhale, release and hang. Continue emphasizing a longer exhale as you hang into the forward bend, relaxing the face, the jaws, the lips, the tongue, rolling up on the next inhale, and releasing on a slow exhale, and once again hanging into the forward bend for a breath or two. Again, coming up on the inhale, releasing into the exhale, and then returning back up on the inhale. Now, balance your breathing with a 4-4 count. So your inhale and your exhale are even, and you're not holding the forward bend anymore. Releasing into the forward bend on the exhale, and then immediately rolling up on the inhale. This begins the transition from Sentosa to Tapas. Now hold the next over the head stretch and begin to emphasize the inhale. Let your inhale be a little longer and more emphasized, and the exhale is just getting rid of the air in order to be able to breathe in again. And use this to generate tapas, to generate more energy, to trigger the sympathetic nervous system. One more repetition, again holding the overhead stretch for a couple of breaths, working the breath, lengthening the inhale, and then add a side stretch. Lift the left heel, flare the right ribs, lift the right heel, flare the left ribs, go side to side. And then back to a prayer position. Notice any effects on the breath, on the nervous system, on the energy, on your mind or consciousness. And then float the arms overhead for chair pose. Start off with a very delicate chair pose and emphasize the exhale. Let your exhale be a little longer and place your attention on the quality of the exhale. And find a very relaxed, gentle chair pose. The knees are bent slightly, the hips reach back slightly. Play with the pose. The chest is tilting forward, the shoulders draw back. Then bring your breath into a 4-4 balanced rhythm and begin to work moderately. Reaching your hips down and back a little further, working the shoulders a little more, lifting the chest a little more strongly, balancing the inhale and exhale, and then begin to emphasize the inhale as we begin to push into the pose more deeply. And take a few breaths here, working the pose. Come up at any point, but if you are doing okay, hold. Lengthening the inhale, compressing the exhale, and when you're finished, come up and then come into a supported forward bend, hands on thighs. Lengthening the spine, waiting for your low back to release, and if it releases and it feels okay, then hang into a forward bend. Focus on lengthening your exhale now, re-establishing, reconnecting with Sentosa, with contentment, with surrender, with letting go. Take a breath or two. Enjoy relaxing into a forward bend. And then when you're ready on the next inhale, roll back up, turning sideways, stepping your feet wide for Trikonasana. Turn your left foot out at 90 degrees. Lift the right heel, take it wide, set it down so your back foot is turned in slightly. And then reach your hips to the right. Tilt the pelvis. And then lengthening through the left side. And just come into a very shallow Trikonasana, triangle pose. Now, Focus on the exhale. Lengthen the exhale, and then come to a balanced rhythm. Even inhale and exhale, and come just slightly deeper into the pose. And then, if it feels good, begin to bring a little bit more action into the pose. Begin to tilt the balance towards tapas by lengthening the inhale, shortening the exhale slightly, leaning into the stretch, strengthening the legs, spiraling the left leg especially. When you're ready, come up and rotate. Turn the right foot out at 90 degrees. Turn the left foot in slightly by lifting the heel, reaching it away, setting it down. Come into a shallow pose and begin re-establishing Sentosa with a long exhale, softening the jaws, the lips, the tongue, the mouth. Coming into the pose just enough that you pick up a very delicate action where you're working slightly and you're stretching slightly and comfortably. Then begin to move into a 4-4 balance, balancing the inhale with the exhale, working into a moderate expression of Trikonasana. And then, when you're ready to work a little harder, shift the focus to the inhale. Work into the pose a little more deeply if it feels good. Strong legs, long spine, keeping the right side of the rib cage elongated. Finish with a forward bend. Turn your feet pigeon-toed, hang into the forward bend, and once again, shift the focus back to the exhale. Stretch the exhale slightly. And with each exhalation, a letting go, a falling away. Take a breath or two. Playing a little bit, shifting left, right, and then stepping the feet together, rolling up, coming back to Tadasana, to mountain pose. Stepping your feet wide again, Virabhadrasana 2, warrior pose. Turning the left foot out at 90 degrees. The right foot is turned in, so the heel is wider than the little toe. The right knee is bent. Center of the kneecap lines up with the second toe. Try to keep your spine vertical, your shoulders directly above the hips. Try not to lean out to the left. A delicate pose. Stretch the exhale. Focus on relaxing. You're still engaging with the pose, but delicately. Then begin to work into a balanced rhythm of breathing. Float the arms out. And then begin to shift the focus to a strong inhale. Lengthen and strengthen the inhale. De-emphasize the exhale. Let it be just a little shorter, a little less important. Use that tapas, that energy created by this breathing, and send that energy into the legs. Exalted warrior. Drop your right hand to the back thigh, float the left arm up, and arch slightly into a back bend. Keep working the legs, and then coming back to Virabhadrasana 2, keeping the focus on the breath, on the inhalation, spiraling the legs away from each other. And then when you're finished, come back to center, turn your right foot out at 90 degrees, turn the left foot in, bend the right knee. Bring your shoulders square with the hips, straighten and strengthen the back leg, sink into that back hip slightly. Long exhale. A shallow expression of the pose, and focus on relaxing, breathing, feeling the pose before you push into it any further. Now begin to transition to a 4-4 balanced breath. Then begin to shift the focus towards tapas. Lengthen the inhale slightly. Emphasize the inhale. De-emphasize the exhale. Spiral the legs if you know how, opening the groin, pushing out through both feet as if you're stretching the mat. Exalted Warrior, drop your left hand to your thigh, float the right arm overhead. Keep working the legs. Keep your focus on the breath. And then coming back to Virabhadrasana 2. Take a few more breaths here. Really leaning into the work. And when you're finished, turn the feet pigeon-toed and then release into a supported forward bend. Or, if it feels better, you can release your hands down to the floor. You can experiment with walking the feet closer together or wider and shifting your weight forward or back, left or right. Taking a little time here. Lengthening the exhale once again. Focusing on relaxing, on letting go. When you're finished, step your feet together, coming down to your hands and knees. Next we'll be working with a back roll. So take your blanket and roll it from one end towards the other. The more you roll the blanket, the larger it gets, so you have control. Unroll the blanket as much as you need to be completely comfortable with this next exercise. We start with the blanket positioned in the upper back, maybe centered on the center of the shoulder blades. And then float your arms overhead. The knees can stay bent, or if it feels okay, you can straighten the legs. And take a few breaths here, just relaxing, letting gravity do all the work for you. No effort required. If you cannot relax, unroll your blanket enough that you can. And then focus on your breath, stretching the exhale slightly. Occasionally reposition by lifting your hips, pushing yourself over the top of the roller just an inch, maybe one vertebra, maybe two. Then set the hips down and relax into the new position. In each new position, taking time to breathe, to relax. And every 4 or 5 breaths, lifting the hips, repositioning, and then relaxing into the new position. Slowly working your way down the length of your spine, one vertebra at a time. We'll take a few more minutes. If you're moving quickly and you finish a little earlier, just start over, moving the roller back up to the shoulders. For those of you that are moving a little more slowly, you should be about halfway down the back. If you aren't, you might speed up a little. Take a couple more minutes to finish. When the roller gets down low enough, you'll be able to grab the roller with your hands, and now you reposition by lifting the hips, and then with your hands move the roller where you need it and set the hips down again. Working the roller down into the small of your back. If you aren't sure how far to go, it doesn't hurt to go too far. So if the roller ends up under the pelvis, it doesn't harm anything. Generally speaking, most people stop just at the upper edge of the pelvis. Take 4 or 5 more breaths. Slow the inhale slightly, slow the exhale slightly. So the breath is balanced now, but slow and deliberate. And then lift the hips, remove the roller with your hands, and then draw the knees into your chest and rock from side to side. Releasing any tension from the low back. Next we'll be working with downward dog and cobra. So coming up to table, hands and knees, hands shoulder width or maybe an inch wider than your shoulders, middle finger pointing straight ahead, the fingers spread wide, tuck the toes under. Then a little cat-cow with your pelvis. And then lifting the tailbone and hold, arching the low back. Now keep the erectus spinae, those muscles in the back that keep that alignment, keep them engaged. Keep the low back arched as you lift the knees. And then push back just slightly into the pose. Starting with a long exhale and a very gentle pose, playing with the pose a little bit. Keeping the knees bent, drawing the chest through, lengthening the spine. And then gradually transition to an even breathing pattern and begin to work the pose. At any point, if you reach your limit, come down a little early and rest. And if you're doing okay, begin to transition into tapas. Begin to lengthen the inhale a little and emphasize the inhalation, drawing prana from the breath with each inhale, pushing it out of the way so you can pull more prana in with the next inhale. Working the pose, couple more breaths. When you're finished, come all the way down to your stomach for cobra. Start by emphasizing the exhale. Lengthen the exhale, relax. Press the tops of your feet into the floor, hands slightly behind the shoulders. Shrug the shoulders, lift the shoulders, draw the shoulder blades together and down the back. Reach the chest forward, reposition, adjust until you're comfortable. Then gradually transitioning to an even pattern and begin working the pose a little more firmly, moving up to a moderate workout. And when you're ready, begin to work the inhale. Press down with the feet. Try to use your back muscles to lift, the hands only supporting or assisting slightly. The chest reaches forward, the shoulders roll back and down, and strong inhale, working the pose. Then, when you're ready, child's pose. Sink your hips back towards your heels. Relax your head, and then stretch the exhale. Softening your face, your tongue, your jaws, your lips, and breathing. One more repetition of downward facing dog. This will be our last work for the class. Once again, start with a slow inhale, play, undulate, reposition, and then as the pose starts to feel right to you, shift to a 4-4 balanced breath and begin to work the pose a little bit. And then when you get the urge to open the throttle, shift and begin emphasizing the inhalation. Longer and more focused. When you decide you're ready to slow down, bring the right knee forward, slide the left leg back for pigeon. And we're looking for a pleasant, delicate stretch in the right hip, outer thigh or buttocks on the front leg. To make this easier, move your left leg to the left and forward. If it becomes too easy, slide the left leg back and to the right. Stretch the exhale now. Use that longer exhalation to coax the mind and the body into relaxing more completely. If it feels good, work your way a little deeper. Take a breath or two or three. Leaning into the stretch if that feels appropriate. And then downward facing dog when you're ready. We won't hold long, but just for a breath or two, emphasize the inhale, work the pose. Once again, bringing up just a little tapas. Leading with the left leg when you're ready to slow down. You'll be bringing the left knee forward, setting the knee on the floor close to your wrists, and sliding the left foot out at an angle away from you. Pigeon pose on the second side. Use the right leg to adjust intensity, walking it to the right and forward to ease up, sliding it left and back to intensify the stretch. Start gently, focus on relaxing, lengthening the exhalation. After 4 or 5 breaths, relaxing the face, the jaws, the lips, the tongue, the mouth, the eyeballs, the cheeks. If you feel the hips and thighs beginning to soften and relax, reposition, work your way a little deeper. making use of the longer exhale. And not just lengthening the exhale, but putting more feeling into the quality, the sound of the exhale. Leaning into a deeper stretch for the last 2 or 3 breaths on the second side. We'll be finishing with a spinal twist and then Shavasana. So when you're ready, come on to your back. Start in Shavasana. Normalize your breath with an even pattern. Then bend both knees, and then bring the right knee in close to your chest. Hold on to it with the right hand and roll to your left. Now you can stack the knees, or you can cross the right knee over the top and bring it all the way to the floor. And then with your left hand, hold the knee with the right hand, sweep it out, and turn your head to the right. And then a very shallow spinal twist. Then experiment with your breath for yourself. Experiment with emphasizing the inhale or the exhale or balancing. Intuitively, without thinking, find a way of breathing that makes sense to the mind and the body. In this particular pose, at this particular moment. Three or four more breaths. And then, when you're ready, coming back to center. Hug both knees, and then bring the left knee in close, roll to the right, anchor the knee with the right hand, turning your head to the left, extending the left arm. If there's any discomfort, bend the left elbow or place your hand on your forehead or cross the arm over your chest. But if it feels okay, use the weight of the left arm to help open the fascia through the core of your body. And again, experiment with your breathing. Looking for the perfect pattern of breath for this pose, for this moment. Three or four more breaths on the second side. When you're finished, come back to center, hug both the knees, rock side to side. And then taking a moment to get comfortable for Shavasana, lengthen the back of your neck. You can use your hands to lift and pull your head away from your shoulder blades. The feet spread evenly. If the low back feels vulnerable, keep the knees bent. If it feels okay, straighten the legs. The arms out away from the hips at a slight angle. Start with an emphasis on the inhale. Make the inhale a little longer. Then slow the exhale, balancing. Ida and Pingula, masculine, feminine, Tapas and Sentosa. And then as you begin your progressive relaxation, allow the exhale to lengthen. Relaxing your face, the jaws, the lips, the tongue, the mouth. Fingers, hands, arms, and shoulders. The feet, the ankles, the calves, the knees, the thighs. Loosening hips, relaxing the buttocks. The low back, the belly, the kidneys, the ribs, the chest, the shoulders. Letting each exhale stretch away into a very slight, effortless sigh. And with each exhale, sinking deeper and deeper into the floor, into the earth. Relaxing the back of the neck, softening the throat, the jaws, the lips, the tongue, especially the root of the tongue. The cheeks and the eyeballs melting into the back of your head, the eyelids and eyebrows, the forehead, the scalp. And then very slowly, very lazily, stretching, yawning, stretching side to side, arching, twisting, and bending. Take a moment to relax again. Then when you're ready, roll to one side. Coming up to a comfortable seated position. We'll be sitting for about 5 minutes. So take just a moment to make sure you're comfortable. If you prefer to lay down and extend your Shavasana, that is fine as well.
So in closing, I'd like to share one of my favorite stories of Siddhartha. And this comes from the very end of the story of Siddhartha and the beginning of the story of the Buddha, that transition that happened. So Siddhartha has been meditating and meditating and meditating, and he starves himself. He goes to extremes, living with the ascetics in the woods, fasting for days and weeks and months. He's emaciated, he's sickly, and one day he realizes that this can't be the path, and he gets up and leaves the other ascetics behind. He goes down to the river, and he is washing and cleaning his body for the first time in years. And he has, 5 years worth of growth of hair. And as he's doing this, a boat floats by, and on the boat is a musician instructing his student in music. And he hears coming across the surface of the water the voice of the teacher, and the teacher is saying, if you draw the string too loose, you cannot play. And if you draw the string too tight, it will snap. And that was when Buddha realized that both extremes were dead ends. That you had to find what he called the middle path, the middle way. That space in between tapas and sentosa. And begin to explore that. So that set him in a new direction. So then he is meditating, and he's just about to receive illumination, become illuminated. And in this classic allegory, a deity appears before him, and the deity first appears as a fire-breathing dragon, okay? And fire rolls out of the dragon and courses over the Buddha, and the Buddha doesn't even blink. And this is, of course, the test of fear. Have you overcome fear? So then the deity, frustrated, disappears, and he comes back with his 3 daughters, and he presents each of his daughters to Buddha in turn. I've forgotten their names: avarice, greed, lust. Buddha doesn't even acknowledge the deity or his daughters because he's meditating. The deity disappears. This time comes back as an old man, and a very amiable old man, and he sits down beside the Buddha and begins to talk to him as the Buddha sits quietly meditating. And the old man says, "Oh, great Siddhartha," he says, "is it not true that you were a prince? Is it not true that you were supposed to rule in your father's stead? Did you not know that your father died several years ago, and the kingdom is without a ruler? In your absence, there's war and famine and pestilence. Your people need you, and here you sit, you selfish little prick, worrying about your own illumination when you should be serving your people." And this is the 3rd test of Buddha. It's called Dharma, social duty. And a lot of people use this example as an excuse that to become illuminated, one must renounce social duty. And they're missing the point. This is the hardest trap of all. Because if you turn your back on that, what are you really thinking about? If you have duties outside in the external world, you're stuck, you're trapped. And so the Buddha reaches down and touches the earth with 2 fingers, signifying, I will not be moved from this spot until I receive illumination. And a deity, a 2nd deity appears, and she instructs the old man. And she says, "Can you not see that my son, through countless incarnations, has given so much of himself that there is nothing left to give. Be gone. And the old man disappears, the female deity disappears, and Buddha is left alone. And then Buddha, or Siddhartha I should say, is left alone. Siddhartha at that point becomes Buddha, receives illumination. The key to the story for me, though, is through countless incarnations, my son has given so much of himself that there is nothing left to give. And that is the path of tapas and sentosa. If you work hard, if you choose to work hard, resting becomes easy. When you rest really, really well, you can work harder. And so the key is not to focus on the relaxation, but first push into. The push is into tapas, and then you relax back into sentosa. And then you push into tapas and you relax back into sentosa. Just like pushing a swing. You always push in one direction, but you receive the backflow. I'd like to thank you for joining me in today's practice, and it's good to practice and get familiar with this idea of tapas and sentosa in your own yoga practice, but I would recommend to you that you begin to think about how this applies in other areas of your life as well. Thank you for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful week. Namaste.